Your phone is a Trojan horse, and every morning you let the enemy breach your gates before you've even dressed. Most people wake up as subjects, slaves to the pull of a glowing screen, already serving someone else's algorithm before their feet hit the floor. They don't choose their first thought. They don't choose their first emotion. They don't choose the first problem that occupies their mind. All of that is chosen for them by a machine that was engineered by some of the most sophisticated behavioral psychologists on the planet, whose single objective is to make sure you never stop looking, and you comply every morning, without resistance, without even realizing there was a choice. But a shogun wakes up as a ruler. He doesn't react to the world, he commands it. Not because he's immune to distraction, no man is, but because he has built a structure around his morning so deliberately, so intentionally, that distraction never gets a foothold. Today, we reclaim your internal sovereignty by turning your first hour into a battlefield. And by the end of this, you won't just know the ritual. You'll understand exactly why it works and what it costs you every single day you choose not to do it. Imagine the silence of a fortress at dawn. Every movement deliberate. Every breath armor. The world outside hasn't started yet. The noise hasn't arrived. And in that window, that narrow corridor between sleep and obligation, a man either seizes control of his mind or surrenders it. While the world drowns in the noise of reactive scrolling, you are building something the noise can't touch. A cold, structured mind. We are stripping away modern comfort to forge a ritual that ensures the day serves you, not the other way around. Because here is what no one tells you. The morning is not just the start of your day. It is the lens through which your entire day is filtered. The emotional state you carry out of your first hour is the emotional state that will color every decision, every conversation, every problem you face until you sleep again. A calm, intentional morning produces a focused, grounded man. A reactive, fragmented morning produces a man who spends the rest of the day trying to catch up to himself. The stakes are that serious. You are losing the war for your mind in the first 60 minutes of the day. Without structured intent, your impulses are the ones in command. It is time to stop being a casualty of modern convenience and start mastering the ancient art of internal sovereignty. The first hour of your day is a zero-sum game. You either win it or you hand it over. There is no middle ground, no partial credit, no compromise position. The moment you reach for your phone, you've already surrendered the field. Someone else's emergency becomes your urgency. Someone else's opinion shapes your mood. Someone else's argument headline or highlight reel hijacks your attention before you've set a single intention of your own. And the insidious part is that it doesn't feel like a defeat. It feels like staying informed. It feels like being connected. It feels productive even. You're responding, you're engaging, you're aware of what's happening. But what you are actually doing is spending the highest quality cognitive resource you have, your morning mind, rested and uncontaminated on inputs that were not selected by you, for goals that are not yours. The Shogun understood this completely. Before his generals entered the war room, before the first council was held, before any external demand was placed on his attention, he had already secured his internal perimeter. He began the day by commanding himself, his thoughts, his body, his intentions, because a man who cannot govern his own first hour has no business governing anything else. Authority starts within. Always think about what it actually means to start your day reactively. Your phone lights up. Before your brain has even finished its transition out of sleep, a neurological process that takes time. That requires the gradual reactivation of your prefrontal cortex. You are processing social information, judgment, comparison, conflict, status. All the things that require your most sophisticated cognitive functions are being demanded of you before those functions are even online. What happens as a result is predictable. You process shallowly. You react instead of respond. Small things feel bigger than they are. Your emotional regulation is compromised because you've pulled your half-awake mind into a high-stimulation environment before it had the chance to stabilize, and you carry that instability forward. A fragmented morning is not just an inconvenience, it is a preview of your entire day. Distraction compounds. Every notification you chase pulls you further from your own priorities, until by midday you are exhausted and unfocused and quietly frustrated without knowing exactly why. You didn't lose the battle at noon. You didn't lose it in the first meeting or the first difficult conversation. You lost it when your eyes opened and you reached for someone else's reality before you'd established your own. That is the cost. And it accumulates every single day you don't address it. The first move of the ritual is a refusal. No screen. Not for the first hour. Non-negotiable. A hard border between the ritual and the noise. What we call the no-screen perimeter. Your phone stays face down. Better, it stays in another room. This is not a suggestion, not a guideline, not something you do when you feel like it. It is the foundational rule of the morning, and every other part of the ritual depends on it. Understand what you're actually doing when you enforce this rule. You are not simply avoiding distraction. You are making a statement of authority to your own nervous system. You are declaring before the world has had a single chance to speak that the first voice this mind will hear today is yours. That declaration, repeated every morning without exception, is how you rebuild the habit of self-command in an environment that is designed to erode it. Modern dopamine is engineered to be frictionless. One tap and the flood begins. News, messages, comparisons, reactions, debates, updates. Each one triggers a small neurological reward. Each one demands a small piece of your attention, and because each one is small, you don't notice the drain, but that drain is real. By the time you've spent 15 minutes in that state, your mind is not your own. It belongs to the aggregate of everything it just consumed, and you will spend the rest of the morning trying to pull it back. You cannot build internal sovereignty on a foundation of borrowed urgency. You cannot think clearly in a mind that is already full of other people's noise. The no-screen perimeter is not about rejecting technology, it is about sequencing. First, you build yourself, then you engage with the world. The next move is discomfort, deliberate physical discomfort. Cold water, not lukewarm, not a brief splash, cold. A cold shower or cold water on your face and neck, whatever the version is, the temperature must be uncomfortable. You already know this is effective. What you might not understand is exactly why, and the reason matters. The shock of cold water activates the sympathetic nervous system. It triggers the release of norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter associated with alertness, focus, and emotional regulation. Your heart rate increases, your breath deepens involuntarily. Your body shifts from its passive horizontal state into something alert and vertical and ready. The fog of sleep burns off not gradually but immediately. But the physiological effect is secondary to the psychological one. When you choose cold water, when comfort is a single knob turn away and you refuse it, you are making the earliest act of self-command available in the entire day. You are proving to yourself, before the world has asked anything of you, that you do not require comfort to function, that your preferences do not override your decisions. Seneca wrote that we should practice hardship, not because suffering has inherent virtue, but because a man who has tested himself against discomfort no longer lives in fear of it. The cold water is a small test, a daily, repeatable, low-stakes test. Pass it every morning and you build a quiet confidence that no motivational content can manufacture. You have evidence. You chose hard when easy was available. That evidence compounds. This physical austerity is not punishment, it is calibration. You are tuning the instrument before the performance. A mind that has already chosen discomfort once is more prepared to choose it again when the stakes are higher, when the discomfort is not cold water but a hard conversation, an uncomfortable decision, a sacrifice that cost you something real. The cold is training. Take it seriously. Now you're awake, not just biologically, mentally. The machine is running. The next move is silence, and this is the part that most men skip because it feels passive. It doesn't produce anything visible. There is nothing to check off. But this is the most important part of the entire ritual. The Japanese concept of mushin, often translated as no mind, is widely misunderstood. It does not mean an empty mind. It means a mind with no fixed attachment to any particular thought. The samurai who trained for mushin was not trying to think nothing. He was practicing the ability to observe his own thoughts without being captured by them, to watch the mind's movement without being dragged along by it. This is what allows a man to act with clarity under pressure, not because the pressure disappears, but because he has learned not to fuse his identity with whatever thought happens to be loudest in the room. Sit. Don't scroll. Don't plan yet. Sit with the silence long enough for the noise inside your own head to begin settling. Because before the world throws its chaos at you, you already carry your own, yesterday's unresolved tension, today's anticipated conflict, the slow background hum of obligations and anxieties that never fully go quiet. When you sit in silence, these things surface. Let them. The mistake is to chase them, to begin problem solving the moment they appear. Don't, just observe. The act of watching your own mental noise without engaging it is not passive. It is one of the most demanding forms of discipline available to you, because every instinct you have will push you to do something about what you're seeing. Resist that instinct. Not forever. Just for long enough that the surface settles. Then, from that quieter place, do something ancient and underused. Visualize the day's friction before it arrives. Not to catastrophize, not to generate anxiety, but to neutralize the element of surprise. Think through the conversation that might go sideways, the task that will resist you, the moment when someone will say something that tests your composure, the meeting that might derail your focus. Walk through those scenes in your mind with calm, deliberate resolution. See yourself responding, not reacting. See yourself choosing your words. See yourself remaining steady when the environment around you isn't. This practice has a name. The Stoics called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Marcus Aurelius used it every morning. He did not consider himself special or immune to difficulty. He considered himself a man who would face difficulty, and he chose to meet it in his mind first, to resolve it before it arrived, to rob it of its power to surprise him. He wrote in his private journals, not for publication, not for posterity, but for himself, that each day he expected ingratitude, arrogance, cruelty, betrayal, not because he was cynical, but because he was prepared. And a prepared man is a composed man. The silence is not empty. By the time you open your eyes from it, you are wearing something the world cannot see and cannot easily penetrate. That is the armor. That is what no productivity app, no morning podcast, no motivational video can give you. You built it yourself, in the quiet, before anyone was watching. From the silence, you moved to strategy. But not the sprawling, anxious kind, not the kind where you list everything that needs doing and immediately feel overwhelmed. One objective, a single primary target. The one thing that, if completed, means today served you. The one thing that, if left undone, means the day slipped past you regardless of everything else you accomplished. Identify it, then write it down. Physical ink on physical paper. Not a note app, not a reminder, not a voice memo. The deliberate act of writing by hand forces your mind to slow to the speed of your pen. You cannot skim through your own handwriting. You cannot scroll past it. The physical act of committing something to paper is an act of authority over yourself. It transforms an intention, which is weightless, into a command, which has gravity. Internal sovereignty is not willpower. That distinction matters enormously. Willpower is a resource with limits. It depletes under stress, under fatigue, under the accumulated weight of the day's demands. A man who relies on willpower alone will find it gone by afternoon when he needs it most. Sovereignty is different. Sovereignty is a structure, a system of rules and intentions you've established for yourself that your impulses do not have the authority to override. It is not energy dependent. It is architecture. When you write your primary objective with your own hand each morning, you are not making a wish. You are issuing yourself an order. And the ritual, the cold water, the silence, the preparation has been building toward this moment. By the time you pick up the pen, you are not the man who woke up disoriented and reached for his phone. You are a man who has already passed his first test, cleared his mind, prepared for the day's friction, and is now stating plainly what today is for. Procrastination, understood correctly, is not laziness. It is a failure of command. The man who knows what he must do and finds reasons not to do it has split his own authority. His intention and his behavior are two different governments, and neither one controls the other. The morning ritual eliminates that split. By the time you leave it, there is no negotiation. There is no "I'll start after I check this one thing." The command is on paper. The day is structured. The Shogun has spoken to himself. Now you step across the threshold. This is where most rituals collapse, not because the ritual was weak, but because the transition back into the world is handled carelessly. The phone comes back on, the inbox opens, and within minutes the focused, grounded man who completed the ritual is being slowly dissolved by the same reactive environment he spent the last hour escaping. This moment, what we call the post-ritual threshold, is the real test, not the cold water, not the silence, not the writing. Those are controlled conditions. The threshold is where discipline meets reality and where the quality of the ritual is actually determined. Here is how you carry the ritual forward. When the phone comes back on, you do not dive in. You approach it the same way you approached the silence, with deliberateness. You read before you respond. You give yourself a breath before you react to anything that creates urgency. You ask one question before engaging. Does this require my immediate attention, or am I being pulled by someone else's timeline? That question sounds simple. In practice, it is one of the most powerful reframes available to you in the modern work environment. Because most of what arrives in your inbox, your messages, your notifications, does not require your immediate response. It requires someone else's immediate anxiety to be managed. And you are not responsible for that. Your primary objective is already written. Your day is already structured. Everything else is interference until the primary objective is complete. Carry the pace of the ritual into the first conversation of the day. Speak with the same deliberateness you practiced in the silence. Listen before you respond. Don't fill every pause. A man who has spent his morning in structured silence is noticeably different in conversation. Calmer, more measured, harder to destabilize. That quality is not accidental. It is trained. In the environment of 2026, where attention is currency and distraction is the default setting of nearly every system you interact with, a structured morning is not a luxury or a preference or a self-care practice. It is a tactical advantage. It is the difference between a man who begins his day as a passenger and one who begins it as the architect. And over time, that difference becomes everything. One morning of the ritual changes very little. 1 week is noticeable. 1 month is significant. 1 year changes the architecture of who you are. Because what you are actually doing every morning you hold this ritual is reinforcing a self-concept. You are proving to yourself, with evidence, that you are a man who commands himself, that you are a man who chooses discomfort, who cultivates clarity, who acts with intention. That self-concept does not stay in the morning. It follows you into every decision, every challenge, every moment where the easier path is visible and you choose the harder one anyway. The Shogun did not rule because of title, lineage, or the fear he inspired in others. He ruled because of consistency. Because every single morning before the world had the chance to test him, he had already passed his own test. He had already proven to himself what he was made of. The external authority was simply a reflection of the internal one. That is the model. That is the standard. Small daily victories do not stay small. They are the raw material of a formidable man. And the morning is where the work begins. Not the big moments, not the dramatic turning points, but the quiet, private, unremarkable discipline of a ritual that no one sees and everyone eventually feels. Every morning you hold it. You become more of who you are choosing to be. Every morning you abandon it. You negotiate with the version of yourself you are trying to leave behind. That negotiation has a cost, and it is paid in the currency of the life you could have lived but didn't. This is not motivation. This is architecture. Build it correctly. Maintain it without compromise, and the day does not happen to you. You happen to the day. If this is the work you've committed to, if you've already decided that comfort is not the point and that the standard you hold yourself to is non-negotiable, then you already know what this channel is for. You are not here to be inspired. You are here to be F-org.